Is Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How you doing? It's time to talk about, I've been watching the old Star Trek movies, and I thought, you know what, let's just talk through some of them. I still need to go back and do the motion picture, but Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, is it actually good or is it bad? Most people regard it as one of the odd numbered ones, so therefore not as good, which ironically, that has some truth at it at times. That being said, I think actually there's a deeper answer here, because I actually find, especially if you've watched my previous video on Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, that really there's some pretty serious logic issues going on in that movie. Are there some in this film? Yes, there are, but that being said, I think they are less concerning than this film. And the logic issues in this film usually are around Starfleet command than Kirk making no sense this time around, for the most part, right? Like, that's the big deal. So let's talk a little bit about Starfleet first before we go through some of the subjects that are in the film. Starfleet Command wants to give commendations to everybody, including Kirk from the last film. This film is very much like Star Trek Wrath of Khan Part 2. But if you just take it as its own film with just the assumption that you have to watch Wrath of Khan, it is a different film in a way, because it's continuing a story that's definitely continuing to let's resurrect Spock. Totally get that, right? But also, man, we just killed the main character. That's pretty serious. And now we're just going to resurrect him right back. It's frustrating, right? But also, it's Spock. You know, if it was Chekhov or Sula, and I like both of them, people wouldn't have been upset in the same way, right? Because Spock is the number, you know, he's the part of the three amigos, him, McCoy, and Kirk, right? And Starfleet Command, they have this epic thing of a Genesis planet, and what are they doing to guard it? And as a side note, I recommend you watch also Trek Culture, has a great breakdown of some issues in this film. But that Star Trek Command in this film is the weird spot in it. They don't actually have anything really guarding it. What they have is a science team with an rebirth class doing scans and studies. You've just created a planet out of a nebula, and you don't have any starships in the area guarding this. That's a huge deal, right? It's Starfleet Command that's the only major glaring problem that hits me right off the top of the head. And, you know, bureaucracy does that kind of silliness, but at the same time, this is an extra level of silliness that you go, we just created a planet and we sent a science team and that's it. And it's funny because once again, it's the Enterprise. It's just the only ship in the area kind of deal, which is hilarious with stuff like, why, what, where is the rest of Starfleet ever? And the answer is apparently in some of these films, they don't exist. There is no Starfleet, just the Enterprise. But anyway, let's go through those. Like, what's some good stuff here? First off, just the cast. First off, Saavik is back, and Saavik is played by a different actor. It's not Kirstie Alley this time. I can't even remember the actress's name. And she's fine. Like, she does well. And she's in the next movie as well. It's The Voyage Home for a little bit at the beginning. But, you know, we have the crew, because this is literally just part 2, and they're picking back up on Vulcan just a little bit after Spock. Sorry, I'm thinking of The Voyage Home. But this is part 2 as far as the crew dealing with this. This is towards the end of the film on Vulcan. My bad. I've been watching them back to back and just going. And this part is, you know, these concepts are great, because Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock is, what is the Enterprise crew, especially the bridge crew and or the crew that's around for different parts, their family. And as we see, the main theme for Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, if I could summarize it, is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And Kirk hit the realization in this film that sometimes the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And he just hit that realization that Spock is family. Spock is his brother in arms and through adventures in time. And so he's going to do whatever he can to help Spock. But it's not just helping Spock, because actually he doesn't quite know right away, because we get Sarek that introduces the concept of a possibility of otherness, because Sarek introduces this concept that you need to bring Spock's Katra to Vulcan to be entombed in a way, so that way his memories can be saved for the rest of Vulcan's lifetime. But that's the reality of what we see with this just picture right here. This crew is a family, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to help their people, their crew. And I appreciate that. I do. Next, though, McCoy being crazy because he's got Spock's Katra in him from the last film. Great concept, and also really creepy whenever McCoy is in different areas and it's like dark, and then you're hearing Spock's voice, and everybody looks over freaked out, and then it's McCoy like, what? Or he still just keeps going, and you're like, ugh, that's creepy. But it really hits home that it's driving McCoy mad, trying to handle a second whole soul within. And just an interesting thing to deal with there, and Kirk and McCoy's relationship of there's going to have to be something addressed, and there's a need here, and not just Spock's need, but also McCoy, who's carrying a heavy burden. I appreciate that. I think that's a great concept here that, in the original series, it was Spock, Bones, and Kirk just, sometimes teasing each other pretty mercilessly, especially Spock and McCoy, but especially McCoy. Whew, yeah, he was savage sometimes. But man, that there was a deep relationship there, and we get to see that in this film, that there's a caring here. We also get to see Spock reborn by the Genesis planet. I think this is probably one of the weaker plot points of the film in a way. I get it. They were looking for a science fiction with more fiction than science in it explanation to bring Spock back, because it's Spock. And so the Genesis planet, his torpedo that was launched from the Enterprise landed on Genesis, and it caused the microbes that were on it, which would already have been alive, to grow and evolve like crazy fast. That's their concept there. And it's kind of interesting, but what does it do for Spock? It actually degenerates him back to birth, to a baby. We don't know, because we see him by that point having gotten out of the torpedo tube and is a young kid, but is growing up really fast. Also, again, Trek Culture made a great point on this too, because I like watching things about Star Trek as well. Like, how does he get out of this tube? Like, is there a hatch on the inside of that? Because there shouldn't be, because normally those tubes, those torpedoes have, torpedoes inside, like all the guts for a torpedo, so there would be no need for a hatch on the inside. And if you're putting a dead person in, they're dead. There's nothing else right there, right? So how did he get out? I don't know, because also, a torpedo slammed into a planet, and also the friction from space. Granted, Spock was dead and then regenerated to an earlier stage of life. It's hard to really make sense of it, but you kind of go, I'm just excited that Spock's back in a way. That's one of those hard things that you get excited because he's back, but also when you stop to think about it, you go, weird. But it is fascinating to see just they get different actors to play Spock through different eras, and then finally he looks just like Spock from the last movie, right? Which, yeah, it's Leonard Nimoy. We better get Leonard Nimoy back. Anyway, it's an interesting thing that's fascinating to pay attention to, but when you stop to think about it, it gets kind of rough. The ending, though, whenever we see Spock reborn, and not just reborn, but also reborn in the sense of his Katra is back in him, his soul is back installed, he starts to remember the crew and Jim and who he really was. And, and this is the next movie, he'll still be struggling in a way, but I think this is an interesting thing, that this is still Spock just trying to reorient himself and relearn who he is, but he still has all those things. It's just reconnecting the mind to the soul. Very interesting stuff. Very cool. Not lastly, but one of those big things too. This is one of the movies where the Enterprise is destroyed, and man, what a moment in Star Trek, because this is the ship that we've grown up with, and number 3, it's here. So even though there's rebirth, there is death in this film, death of the Enterprise, and not just the Enterprise, but we'll talk about the other one in a second. But the death of the Enterprise is such a big thing, and it's interesting because Kirk uses it to blow up the Klingon boarding crew that's on there, and it's something about it feels off to me in a way, because it's like, how did the Klingons not like figure something out when they're like, it's deserted, this is weird? And they do justify, like, they're hiding. Okay, that's fair, that could happen. But you kind of go, okay, something is wrong when you're not seeing anybody at all. Interesting, right? But yeah, the Enterprise gets destroyed, and it's quite the interesting destruction. It's fascinating. You're like, whew, that is heartbreaking. Next, though, the Klingons. We have Christopher. Oh my goodness, I want to say Christopher Eccleston. That's not him. Great Scott Marty. Back to the Future actor, and I can't even remember his name right now off the top of my head. It's just gone. But he plays Kruge. So love this actor, and I can't remember his name right now. Oh my goodness, it's going to hit me like in an hour. But I love him as Kruge. The Klingons in this movie are more just there than anything. It's just, we want Klingons, which they work fine. It's just they're not anything crazy special, especially when you see the Undiscovered Country and you get the general dude that's General Chang or something. Crazy interesting character. But the poor Klingons that have to follow this guy's orders, one gets shot by Kruge and instantly melted, disintegrated, and crazy stuff there, right? And then his entire crew, other than like one guy, gets vaporized by the Enterprise, going up in smoke. So Kruge wants power and is a complete and absolute idiot in how to get it. Like, he just shows up at Genesis going, give me the secrets, and you're like, how do you know somebody at Genesis? I mean, granted, they would be a science team at the initial, but like, why would you assume Kirk knew for sure unless you had all the data files, which again, they did at the beginning of the film. And the Bird of Prey, man, it just looks good. It's just cool. It's just a cool ship. Fantastic. And lastly here, I believe, Saavik, she's there. She exists. She's fine. I think the interesting thing is David is in this film, but his mother is not. Like, she's just kind of gone, which is odd in a way. Maybe she's just off somewhere else. I don't know. Doing some more research pieces for this, based off of scans. I don't know. Maybe she's still on regular one. I don't know. But anyway, it's just David. And David's another death in this film. It's interesting thing that they get Spock back, but what does it cost them? It costs them the Enterprise, and it costs them David, Kirk's son. Pretty high cost for the saving of one person. That's a fascinating thing. I think sometimes too, Kirk could have been a little bit more cautious on how he handles things with the Enterprise in combat and stuff, but he did know about the cloaking device and when to fire on them. That's just it. It's like, he's smarter in this movie. He's back to Kirk understanding and doing what he's supposed to, not derpy that makes no sense in Wrath of Khan Kirk. So yeah, I think those are the big things. Is the search for Spock actually good? I think it is. I watched it again and I was enjoying it. There are parts that definitely stretch the logic, but not to the extent of Wrath of Khan. That being said, it's not as action-packed in the same way, but you do get to see the Enterprise destroyed, and there is some combat. It's an interesting thing when you go back and watch the original Star Trek movies. They are slower paced than modern films. Very interesting. Because I remember watching them like that and going, huh, they are slower. And now watching it again now after Marvel movies and all these other things, I go, wow, they're definitely slower than what we have today. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So let me know down in the comments below. What do you think of the Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock? Is it actually good? Is it a movie that you enjoy and go back and watch? What do you think of it in comparison to Wrath of Khan, and why? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and thank you so much for joining me for my other video about Wrath of Khan. Like, share, and subscribe. Take care.